Welcome back to another episode of the B2B Founder Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Trainer. The future of B2B startups is going to be super fascinating. I've seen how companies have risen and transformed the traditional but outdated strategies that are already set in place. One such example is Penji. This is an on-demand graphic design service as a service company catering to businesses. Have shown what's possible when you instigate change. In today's episode, I get to pick the brain of Penji's founder, Johnathan Grzybowski. We talk about the need to trust the process, growing without using sales reps, how they built customer success into their culture, the importance of putting processes in place to expand, and so much more. What first drew me to Johnathan and Penji was their pricing model. He took the traditional SaaS subscription and applied it to a services B2B business. But once I dug in, I realized that Johnathan and Penji were doing what was providing, I believe, the blueprint for B2B companies to grow and scale in 2021. In addition, Johnathan and the team were kind enough to provide us and the listeners a 15% off their first month if you try Penji. That's PENJI.co. Just head over to their website and use the coupon code B2B. That's B, the number 2B, Founder 15, and get 15% off of your first month. And also, as a favor, if you enjoy the podcast, please do subscribe. It'll help us reach more founders. Now, on to the interview. Hey, good morning, Johnathan. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to kick some butt today.
It's my pleasure to have you here. I'm super excited to have you because your company, Penji, I believe could be the blueprint for B2B companies of the future. So I definitely want to dig into that topic with you. But first, maybe just share with the audience a little bit about your background in Penji, and then we'll dig back into that if that's cool.
Yeah, Penji was kind of founded on some form of like a mistake to a degree. We used to be a graphic design / digital marketing / SEO / web design / web development agency. And this was probably about, I'm 32 now. So when I was 23, 24, we started the agency, and I did that till about 27, 28. And we just did a lot of again, web design, web development, SEO stuff. And we weren't like the best at it. We were good. We weren't great. So we would lose clients. We would gain clients. We would work with big name organizations. But to be perfectly honest, there wasn't anything very rewarding that we were doing. And I remember the day that I just felt so defeated was that we got a contract with the school I went to, which was Rutgers.
Okay.
And we got a website contract. And I remember being like, oh my God, this is it. This is the best day ever. Like, we made it, we hit the goal, etc. And then we started doing it. And it was just the most frustrating thing on planet Earth, because the people that we thought we were going to help weren't actually the end users. So we kind of came to the conclusion that we just needed to change and we needed to do something. We looked at ourselves and said, like, what are some things that we want to do in our lives? Is we want to help people. We want to build businesses. We want to help other people build businesses. We want to create resources and tools and just guides and help people. And that wasn't the way that we were going to do it. And so we kind of, I guess, came up with a few ideas, inevitably stuck on this type of business model.
Okay.
But it was so difficult to be able to get to that point, and a lot of struggle and a lot of failure. We are 100% cash flow positive. So we've never received an ounce of funding. And we did that because of the 9 years. Like, this is my only job that I've ever had in my real job that I've ever had in my life. And we've built the business from, again, those mistakes that we made early on in our careers. We saved a lot of cash. We invested in the right things. We moved the needle at the exact correct way in order for us to get here. And now with 100 plus employees, where we're just rocking and rolling. It stemmed from just the idea of us constantly moving the needle forward and accepting that failure and continuing on. So I'd say a lot of this has been hard work. A lot of it has been luck, but you're talking to something that I'm incredibly proud of is a self-made individual. Like I didn't have, we as a company, we never had any help. So that's kind of just a quick background of Penji, a little bit about me in particular, and just like my mindset and things like that.
That's awesome. I think it's such a good point on because I encourage founders, man, if you can self-fund, do it as long as possible, right?
Exactly.
You meet too
100%.
many that their whole plan is that, hey, I've got an idea and I've already 4 rounds of funding out of how we're going to do this. And maybe because I didn't come from that world, I don't understand why you would not want to fund through growth, kind of like you're doing. I know there's times to throw gas on the fire, blah, blah, blah. But
Yeah.
no, I so appreciate that what you did. And the fact and the good thing, a lot of the founders I do have on, it's the 10-year overnight success or the 3-year overnight.
Yeah, for sure.
There's no real 24-hour overnight success. And
100%. Yeah.
the fact that you didn't have the experience building a business heading into it, I think is really cool too. And a testament to what you guys have built.
Yeah. I mean, like we've literally have done everything wrong many times.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. But I just love the resiliency of our team, because if it wasn't for the resiliency of just constantly moving forward, I know for a fact that we wouldn't be here. So yeah, I mean, to the point of startups and stuff like that, I think shows like Shark Tank, as great as they are, they definitely ruined the idea of entrepreneurship to a degree. And in addition to that, the Instagram culture and the influencer culture of like making entrepreneur look as if it's a lot cooler than what it actually is, and it's really not. It's probably one of the darkest things that you could do in your lifetime. Like I wouldn't wish the thoughts that I have sometimes in my head on my worst enemy. There are some really really good days and there's some really bad days. There's definitely more, I'd like to think that there's more peaks than anything else, but there are days in the very beginning where I just questioned everything. I wanted to quit. So yeah, I mean, if you're going to get into the world of entrepreneurship, if you're going to be a founder, then you better strap up and get ready to go to war.
Yeah. And, one of the other things I took, so again, I've shared offline a little bit. I spent my 25 plus, now 30 plus year career bouncing between enterprise and startups. And the one thing that I will always remind the startup entrepreneurs or founders is, man, you got to love the process of what you're going through. I mean, it sounds like you do like the daily grind. Everything's got the up and down. But if you're just focused on what that end game is, you're going to be sorely disappointed, even if you hit that end game. It's just right. It's got to be part of the journey. I'd love to get your
100%.
perspective that you share that
I
thought.
think that's a really good point. Like I actually love the process. Like I'm obsessed with the process. And I think that's what helps. I don't know. I mean, I think that definitely to a degree has helped, but like I'm just a process oriented individual myself. Like I'll be able to just like look at some things and feedback from individuals and people and be able to assess and look at the data and make a
Right.
sound decision. But if you're not obsessed with the process, like there's probably for the past 3 to 3 years, 4 years, I can confidently say 2 years, but definitely I would even say as far as stretch and say possibly 3 to 4.
Okay.
I've done the same thing every single day.
Okay.
So like if you're okay with that, then I think you'll be fine. But if that like scares the living crap out of you, then just stop what you're doing right now, because that's what it takes in order to grow the business.
Yeah, that's such a good point. No, it's so true. And I quote, the Iowa State football coach, he's a big trust the process. And one of his
Yeah,
famous speeches, trust the process, and someday the process will love you back. You've
sure.
trusted the process. Now the process is starting to love
I'm
you.
from Philadelphia, so I'm a big NBA guy.
Okay.
And that's our
I'll
trust the
trust the process.
process
Yes. Okay.
is a Joel Embiid quote. I mean, I'm sure he probably did it first, the person you're talking about, but Joel Embiid said trust the process. And that phrase has always been very important to me. Trust the process. So yeah, I
Yeah.
love that quote.
That's awesome. I forgot. I did know that. And there was a little bit of a joke when you guys took a step backwards with it a couple of years ago. It seems like you got the right coach, right team. Is this the
Right
year?
now we do, yeah. Number one in the Eastern Conference, Doc Rivers. I'd
Rivers.
love for Ben Simmons to shoot the ball, even though I used to be a huge Ben Simmons supporter of just, he's fine the way he is. But now I think it's getting to a point, and this is kind of relevant to business too. You kind of get to a point where if you're doing the same things over and over again, and you're not able to introduce new things, then you're going to get stuck in your ways. And I think that's Ben Simmons right now. Is he's so predictable, right? Like I did the same things for years and years, and for 2, 3, 4 years every single day. It was the same type of things, but it wasn't the same thing. It wasn't like wake up and answer emails and then do this and do that. Like there's a lot of processes and changes that have been made, but for the most part, it's like being able to assess your life and your day and be able to make those strategic changes. I don't think Ben Simmons has specifically done that, but if so, you have a choice in business. You could be the person that just is so confident in themselves that just goes down the basketball court every single time you get the ball. You run into somebody and kick out. You can keep doing that, but eventually the defense is going to be able to understand what you're doing. Or you can, go up and shoot once, get that defense a little bit off of their toes a little bit, have them guard you and come up to the ball a little bit more and then kick out and you have an open three. So there's not a lot of analogies that could be said, but again, there's a lot of beauty in that process. But at the same time, you have to be able to look at the data in order to make sound decisions, in order to make strategic decisions to move the company forward.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so true. And I think you're right. And I'm curious if it's in his head that he can't shoot it because he's such a good athlete. He's got to have the
Yeah, I don't
ability to be
get
able
it.
to shoot it. So that's the next step in the breakthrough, right? Just as your good segue into businesses hitting, getting through the different thresholds of growth, right? It's
For sure.
looking at things differently. And that's actually is a good segue to kind of my next question. So one of the stats I talk a lot about on this show is, less than 10% of all startups ever get to $1 million in annual revenue. And that's just crazy. And the next level up is
10%, you said?
10%, and less than 1% get to 10 million in revenue. And
Huh.
when I look specifically at B2B companies, I don't think that's necessarily an idea problem. I think it's more of an execution problem. And knowing your story now, I'd love to maybe dig in that said, hey, when we started Penji, we're now going to focus on graphic design or design services. And I think I've heard you mention previously, or so you wrote about it somewhere about, the first 100 customers, we went out and got them. Right. And what I found through these interviews is even the founders that have gone through those thresholds hit the same plateau. And for a while, I couldn't figure out why it was $1 million. That seemed really arbitrary. And it turns out it isn't exactly a million. It's when that founder or co-founder runs out of their network to sell to, and they've got to reach people that they don't know. There's always that learning curve. And I know you guys have got through that. So I'd love to maybe have you kind of walk through, as you approach that, what were some of the things that you did to help you get beyond that point?
I like to write. I'm writing this down because I think what you just asked is super important, and I think it's not necessarily discussed. And I can actually come up with something extremely strategic to help more people with this. Awesome. So you came up with a really good idea just now. So I would like to say the first 100 customers were strictly our network. Back in the day when I was doing the agency, I went to every single stupid networking event on the planet. Like I was the guy that was just like at the network events begging for business. And like, I'm so grateful that I don't do that anymore. So the first 100 customers was just asking and begging, et cetera, et cetera. The next 100, I'd say the next like 100 to 500 was probably related to like localized press and notoriety. Now I'm saying like these customers, that doesn't mean that like they're withstanding, right? Like they're not like staying on as customers. I'm just saying like those first groups of customers. So I'd say it started from network to a broader radius of network to advertising. And then from there, brand recognition and trust, I'd say is probably the next stage. So I would probably say it's like 4 stages of growth. And right now, we exhausted our network. The people in our local region they definitely know us. I definitely can say in full confidence they don't know how big we are, which I'm totally cool with. And then the third and fourth aspect that we're kind of in between right now is the idea of advertising and then that brand recognition, that logo type of thing. So we're a B2B company. We're kind of a SaaS company. We're kind of not a SaaS company. we're kind of like that awkward in between thing, that new idea of software as a service is service as a service. So that level of in between, like now we need to be able to say Penji is associated with graphic design. And so rather than saying, other companies out there that do graphic design, we want them to associate our name with that keyword of graphic design. And that takes a lot of time and money and patience. It takes conversations like this, where, let's just say you have 100 people that listen to your podcast and they hear our story, they hear Penji's name. That's just going to be a trickle down effect over time. Like I'm not doing this podcast right now in order to generate a ton of revenue for the business, right? Like that's just not my goal. My goal is to be able to talk to you, to create a relationship with your audience and yourself, and then be able to say in 5 years from now, because this is an evergreen podcast, people might listen to it and see, oh, okay, I heard them on this podcast or this show, or he talked to this person. If I do that times 100 throughout the course of a year, or a month, or whatever it may be, I'm very confident that more people are going to start to associate Penji with the word graphic design. And then by the time that they check our website and they go to our website and they go on Facebook and they go on to whatever platform they're choosing and they see our ads, then they're going to just start to see us even more. Penji is associated with graphic design. So I would, just to kind of recap, the first 100, I'd say network. The first like maybe 200 to 300 or so on is probably your 50-mile radius of where you're geographically located. Then after that, you have that like very strong foundation of people, of where you have a little bit more of like a expendable income for your business. Then you put that into advertising to repeat that mindset. And then the last aspect would be the brand recognition, so people can become more loyal to your company and to your brand.
Yeah, that's so good. And, part of what excited me about this is we still have a lot of founders that follow what I would call the traditional, right? Well, I need to go hire a sales rep. And then,
Absolutely.
still enterprise companies that are making 100 SDR teams that are making 100 cold calls a day, which are fine. If their message is, hey, brand awareness, you may not have this problem now, but hey, Penji's here to do really expensive and really hard to do. And, I can give you the example from, I had heard you on a different podcast. That's how we got connected. I didn't really know I needed design services, but after hearing you, I went and checked out the podcast and like, maybe they really could help a couple of the projects that I have right now.
For sure.
And I did, full disclosure, I did become a customer because you helped me solve a problem that I didn't know was aware. And I think there's so many founders that want to skip from how do I build my brand awareness, so when people do have a problem, they think of me, to straight to come buy from me right now, right? So
Exactly.
you fast forward, and it's a long game, and I think
is.
the long game's changing. And that's why I said the way you set this up, I think makes a lot of sense. And I think there's other companies that are starting to do it. But I used to think, well, this is just because it's a newer business. No, you're a B2B business. If you keep growing the way you're growing, you're going to become an enterprise company. And you did it without, you may have some sales reps that do some work for you, but you built it the way I would say modern buyers are looking to buy, right? It's online solving problems. So
we used to have salespeople.
oh, interesting. Okay.
We actually got rid of them ethically, of course. Like we didn't just fire them. They just,
Right.
they actually ended up being team members of Penji still to this day. But we had people specifically go through. So I'll say this, right? Our business is a little bit different than most because we're in the game of attention. So we want people to remember Penji, whereas some B2B people, like I think we talked a little bit off air about the person that does like LinkedIn ads, right? Like this strategy won't work for that person. I mean, maybe it will, but like, I don't think so. Johnathan, I don't want to be remembered as Penji. I'd rather have Penji be remembered first. So with that said, we're in the game of our name being out there as much as possible. And so we used to have salespeople say, hey, you need graphic design. But then we looked at the data and we realized that a lot of people just those customers didn't stay as long as we would have hoped for them, because we figured that if we were to have a little bit more of like a custom approach and like unique sales process, that they would want to actually talk to the person and get to know us a little bit more and kind of build that relationship. And the data just said that we were completely wrong. So that might work for other people. It doesn't work for us. So we've created a demo page. And I think that this is going to be really beneficial for anybody who does this, not just like us, but we created a demo page that basically says, hey, this is who we are. This is what we do. You'll actually see my ugly face directly on that video, just explaining the process. And then it's up to you to decide whether or not you want it, And I think that's the benefit of what we were able to do is we found the problem because we had the problem ourselves and we can speak to it a little bit better. We needed graphic designers when we were in our agency, and that was the problem that we had. And we found a way to fix it. Again, you had that problem, several thousands of other people have that problem as well. And if your problem isn't large enough, then people won't flock to you. If you could find a way to make it a problem and make it and sell it, I'll give you one more story, right?
Sure, please.
If that's okay. So there's an old friend of mine. He has a business that does advertising on cars.
Okay.
And I love his business model. I think it's absolutely brilliant. But he bragged about on LinkedIn the other day about how he sat in a sales meeting and the person asked him, how can I trust that you'll do the right thing for my business? And he responded in a very coherent way. This is what we do. He tried to build that loyalty and that aspect of our foundation, our credibility. I think that was the right word. Credibility was the word I've been trying to find.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
He's been trying to he's trying to build the credibility up to the sales partner. And I looked at it and I see all these people commenting. And they're like, yeah, this is amazing. Thank you so much. This is so inspiring. And I was the only person that said, I would have actually walked out of that meeting because if you get to the table, in my opinion, at least, and you could disagree and we could have this healthy conversation, that's fine. But I think that if you get to the table and that person doesn't already trust what you're doing, then you've already lost them, and they will be a customer because you can sell them directly face to face, but they won't be your best customer.
Right.
The people that are your best customers, the people that we're trying to find, aren't the people that ask, well, how are you different than this person, than that person? Like, you should be able to go on our website. If you ask that question, and we need to redo our website to make it better in order for you to clearly understand how we're better than most people. If we do that, in my opinion, we've already lost, and we don't even deserve you as a customer, and we're not going to fight for you. The people that we get customers every day that don't even go to the demo page and don't even read. They go to our website because they could see the value. And those are the people we want to find, hundreds and thousands of those people, and not just beg for the random business from a person that we know isn't going to be the best for us.
Yeah, there's so much good stuff in there. We could go 3 or 4 different ways, but
For sure.
one for sure. Maybe just half in the sales. I kind of grew up in a sales organization, so for me to kind of pivot my thinking the way it's going, I view sales as hand-to-hand combat, right? You could be the best sales rep. You're going to hit your quota. You're going to do really well. The company will benefit. But if you want to scale, you just can't scale a company off of the back of sales reps anymore. Maybe unless you're going after, you need your very condensed industry you're going into. There's 10 main customers you get in, you're set, right? Because they're huge contracts. But the markets, the majority of companies are going after, there's just no way you can do that. And then part 2, I'd like to tie back to is, the aspect of the customer life cycle, right? Without getting too deep, but right, most folks say, hey, we sold them, they're in the business, let's hope and pray they stay, right? And I had a super simple equation that a former boss of mine taught me in the early days, A-R-N-E, right? Acquisition, retention, and expansion. And do you have a plan for each of those? And too often people think this is how we're going to get new business, but don't put the strategy or the leverage or the right people to maintain the folks that you got on board. And in your example of the guy that you power your way to get a customer on board, and then they're going to be long-term, an advocate, an ambassador, probably not. But if you provide some great level of service on the back end that made them kind of enable what they're doing afterwards, it's such a underappreciated process in a lot of companies. So I'd love to maybe dig in a little bit, because I know that's important to you, to keep just early on, was it customer success, without throwing up too many of the buzzwords, you're taking care of your customers. I'm assuming you built that in early into the process, just based on what we've talked about so far.
Yeah, I think the idea of how we want our customers to feel is that How can I say this? I have two thoughts in my head. We want our customers to feel like they're paying a lot of money for a service, right? It's like we're not the cheapest service. I mean, I think we're very cheap. We're very affordable. We're somewhere around
It's value.
yeah, it depends on the value exactly. 400 to 500 to $900 a month, right? I mean, to some people that's a decent amount of money. To others, it's like incredibly affordable. So we want people to receive. A lot of people say the best customer service. We just want people. We want to treat people like humans. Like we want people to go in and know that even though like it's graphic design. So graphic design, you're gonna receive something and you're gonna be like, this sucks, right? Like even still, like I help run the company with a couple of people. I receive crap graphic design. Like I like we're not going to produce the best stuff every single day. It's just mathematically not possible.
Right.
You're going to receive something bad. The difference in what I think is where we get it right is that we're okay admitting that we got it wrong and we're willing to fix it immediately. And I think that's the key to that level of transparency. Like we're very clear, I think, to our customers that we aren't perfect. And I think that the customer knows that we're going to do whatever we can in order to get it right if we got it wrong. And if we always get it right, then they're going to know that we have their back. Whether that's like responding to something within like a 10-minute time frame, which a lot of our support staff is told to do, to receive, at least try. Sometimes it doesn't work that way, but the goal is to receive an email in under 10 minutes. Again, sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't, but that level of like confidence and that understanding is like, if you're mad, then if you, regardless of your mental state, whether you're happy or sad or mad or frustrated or ecstatic, we want somebody to respond to you as quickly as possible, because your level of attention and emotion is at its highest as soon as you send that email. And so if you can maintain that throughout the course, then whether you're mad and you send a pissed off email, you respond somebody responds to you right away, you're going to diffuse that immediately. And then you can go back to your day and say, hey, they actually helped me out. If you're ecstatic and you want to promote something, then you're going to maintain that level of happiness all throughout. So that's kind of like the science behind our customer experience. It's not like the sexiest thing on the planet, but it just works for us because we built it into our culture. So that's the next thing too. The culture aspect of our jobs, our what we do, is that the way our team members respond to our customers is the same way that we respond to our team. So it's not something that's like foreign to them. Like
Right.
we are always accessible. Like even co-founders are as accessible as another designer is. If they want to talk to us about something, we're there. If they want to message us on Slack, we're there. We're going to respond. We're going to get on a video call with them. And I think that level of communication style then translates into the customer because they feel more confident. They're not walking on eggshells every time they send a message. They know that they're respected internally, and then they reciprocate that through the customer. And I have one final point because my co-founder and I talked about this last night. We said something along the lines of, you don't work for me, you work for Penji, and we work for Penji together. And that's kind of been the mentality of how we grow the company. It's not like I'm not the boss. Like the minute somebody calls me boss, I'm like, don't do that ever again. That's the one time that I'll be very stern because I don't want to be called a boss. Like I'm not your boss. Like, yes, I give you a paycheck. Like I don't own you.
Right.
You are a human being. And at the same time, like you have a goal, do your job. Your goal is to do X. It's very clear that this is your job. Do this. If you do it well, you'll be reciprocated, handsomely and rewarded handsomely. If not, then we're going to have a conversation. But because we're so transparent, they already know that going in. So anytime we've ever had a customer or a team member leave, they've already known that they deserve to go. And
Interesting.
it was never a matter of like, it's been the rug was swept right underneath them.
No
So I
surprise.
think that level of confidence that our team members have in us and we have in them, it translates to the customer experience.
Yeah, that's so good. Can we dig into that for a second?
Let's
Just
do it.
yeah, because you mentioned I think up close to 100 employees now, and I really love the idea of company first, that you're building this brand. It's bigger. It's going to get bigger. You're going to bring more people in, and then thinking about it from the culture of the early days, right? As you started to expand and bring people on, were you intentional about the people that you were bringing into the organization, or is this something that kind of evolved as you started to grow and realized? There's certain folks, right? The way we treat each other internally should be the way we treat the customers. Is this something that you were looking for early on, or how did that culture kind of evolve as you grow? Because it gets hard to do the larger you
It
get.
does, yeah. Yeah, I don't. That's a really good question, and I'll be honest, I don't really know what the answer is. I think it was just one of those things that was just started early on. I can't remember the actual thing, but we've always had team meetings. We've always tried to keep the meetings light. It's really easy to accuse somebody of doing a poor job, especially with graphic design. So we really try and find a way to say and be fair and as fair as possible. I just think that level of fairness was just built into our DNA of human beings. It wasn't necessarily something that we tried to do. I'll speak for myself. My co-founder might have a different answer, but I think that because of just the way that we are raised, I think that's just how we wanted to be treated. And it was never like a book or anything like that. It was just like, at first it was, we'll take anybody that we can. Now we're a little bit more strategic, but I think because the way we treat them, they just know that we have their back. The other thing too that we always ask people in the beginning was, what is your dream? And we still ask them that question to the day, because if we ask them what their dream is and they tell us, their dream might be they want to be a chef, right? Or they might want to do whatever. We want to be able to know what their motivation is in order to be able to help them better, as servants to them. If they want to make a really good living, then we know money is their motivational factor, and we might incentivize them to perform better. I don't know, just giving you an
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
If they want more stability and comfort, we can give them guidelines to say, well, here's how you could be more stable in your business, meet these metrics, you'll have a job for life. So understanding what their motivation is allows us to it allows us to manage better.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think it seems so intuitive when you say it, but I don't think a lot of folks practice that. So
For sure.
it's even just going back to the early days, I'm sure that was subconsciously, right? That's the way you wanted to be treated. It's just the way you kind of brought it into the organization. And,
Hmm.
definitely one thing as I've gotten older, I've adopted more of the no asshole policy, right? Like, or I'm only work with good people that, I'm only going to recommend people to other good people at this stage, that there's just not time for that other piece of it. And I know we're starting to run short on time, and I want to respect your time, but I do want to, we kind of highlighted process, and maybe we could just touch on it briefly, that as you started to scale, right, you had more customers coming in. When did you start to think about process and build it into the organization? And right, what I find a lot is it doesn't happen soon enough, then you're really trying to catch up after the train's left the station, or you're spending too much time on it up front. So I'm just curious where and how you found that balance as you started to grow.
I don't have a good balance.
Okay.
I'll just be perfectly honest with you. I am so detail oriented in the process that it's probably also my Achilles heel. I'll give you an example. The other day, I like redid the training for our team members for like the 100th time. So I'm definitely more obsessed with the process than I probably should be, just because I want things to be as like tight as possible.
Right.
So I think in the very beginning, the hardest thing that I had when it comes to process is being able to translate everything that I do in order to get somebody else to do it. And I like wrote it out and things like that. And I was like, this makes complete sense. And you gave it to somebody and they're like, oh, what the hell are you talking about? So I think now, to kind of help with the process, what I've been able to do is create video
Yeah.
with processes, create word like a text, and then in addition to that, create presentations to make your process as visual as possible. I don't know if that directly answered the question, but I think for me in particular, to make myself as clear as possible with zero or minimal confusion is like the absolute end goal for me.
Right. Yeah, it's clear, and it definitely leveraged and relied heavily on process in early days. I can just tell based on it. But curious as to as you continue to scale, you're not going to be involved. You can't be with all the processes. So are you building kind of an infrastructure or some sort of process to help the process evolve?
Yeah, I think the goal that I have in particular is like I am focused on a very specific part of our company. So like my job is promotion sales, but in addition to that, to the support. So that those are my specializations. Each team member in our company, like the executives, the managers, they all have their own specialization. So your job is to specialize in this, your job is to specialize in that. Because we have that level of specialization, I think it allows us to further expand how we're able to succeed. Because um, if you're able to grow this particular sector of what you're good at, then the other parts of the company will grow naturally. And I think that's very true to how we're doing things till to this day. Is I don't overstep the designer aspect of things because I'm not a designer. I have other team members that can do a better job at that. Once I get it to a certain point, then you hire somebody to take over and then they can do it. But I want to end this thought by saying you can't create training for anybody, or you can't pass a process on or try to hire somebody until you've done the job. I would say at least 6 months to a year.
No, I would agree with that. Yeah. I mean, it'd
Yeah.
really be hard to do that
Because
without.
if you can't do it yourself, then how the hell are you going to get, like, especially salesperson, like going back to what you talked about with salespeople, if you're struggling to get sales and you can't get sales and you think that you could hire somebody in order to get sales for you, how the hell are they going to be able to get sales if you can't even get sales for yourself? And that's usually the first thing that people do is like, I want to be a part of the process and I want to hire salespeople in order to do it for me. Well, if you're not already growing the company, you should have an overabundance amount of sales and prospects in your pipeline before you even think about hiring somebody else to do sales for you.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. And yeah, because you're going to have the passion, especially on the sales side. You know your product, you're passionate about the business, everything that if you bring somebody that they're not going to have that passion. So they're going to have to be as confident in what you're building. And 100% agree. And I promise I'm taking one more rabbit hole just to tie off on the growth side, because we talked about sales. And I know I've heard you speak in the past about the content and how critical that is to growing a company. And, I've come around the last 12 months to see the importance of it, and I'm getting better at doing it myself. But maybe just kind of tie off of why, that's been so important to what you guys are built and why it should be important to other companies as they're starting to look to scale.
Yeah, if people come to you I mean, it's attention, right? Like when you get bored throughout your day, maybe not you, I don't know, but there are people in this world that when they get bored, they go to their phones and they check social media, or they see a cool blog that they want to, they see a headline for and they want to like read it and save it and things like that. If you're constantly being the resource for people to help them with their business, then people are going to start to be more curious about their brand and they're going to naturally talk about you. When it comes to content, we invested and still to this day a lot of money and time and resources and energy into content creation for the sole purpose of just scattering our branding throughout the internet. Again, this is content right here. We're really good at SEO, we're really good at content writing, and we're able to rank really well for keywords and then use our advertising strategies in order to convert them as customers. That's still a cornerstone piece to our marketing to this day. But eventually over time, Facebook is going to be limited through their advertising. I'm sure LinkedIn will be as well, and Instagram will be, and all these times of advertising are slowly going to go away. And then what else do you have left, right? You have nothing unless you have created pieces of content that rank really well in order for people to just like naturally find your information and data. So that's kind of the piece that we want to get to, is become a media company where people are subscribed or they save particular entities and they just keep coming back in order to receive that value. Whether that's like an email newsletter, that could be it too. So like we made it a point in the very beginning to create really good and helpful content. And I think that has followed us throughout the course of our duration of our life cycle.
And I think that's just going to become a cost of doing business, right? If you want to be
That is, yeah.
successful, you're going to have to be. And I had an author, he's a VC, Steve Grzybowski, he's I think out of Australia. And he just recently, among his other projects, started a media company that he does believe that every brand is almost has to become their own publisher or media company in order to
Yep.
maybe compete in this world. And I think the pandemic has helped accelerate that. So, kudos again to you to being ahead of the time, the pioneer. But again, that comes back to, maybe that's a good way to tie this all the way back is, I do think that your approach and your model is going to be the future. And we've hardly even touched on, your pricing, right? It's a retainer service, not software as a service, but,
Service as a service. Yeah.
more people, everybody should be thinking about how do we do this, right?
Yeah.
Because, anything from a Whoop band, right, that used to be your watch, now is a monthly subscription. I don't pay for it. They just send me, so I think we're going to see in more and more customers, it's easier as a business owner to manage reoccurring revenue than it is project-based work. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Easier
and
to
I
do it
think
that way.
customers prefer it, right? I mean, it's budgeted, you can manage it, you can, especially if they're getting value. That's the whole key, comes back to what you guys do is you provide value for what it is. And anyway, so anything that we didn't touch on that you think we should chat about before I get to my final question for you?
Yeah, let's get to your final questions.
All right. What is one thing that you would highly recommend?
I would say to invest more time in yourself. By nature, I am a relatively selfish individual, but I'm also incredibly self-aware. And I think in order for you to succeed as a business person, whether it's an entrepreneur, whether it's a salesperson, whatever it may be, you have to be in the best shape of your life, whether it's mentally or physically. I, in particular, am very in tune with my body. And so I like to work out. I like to eat really gross food. And I also like to be really healthy. So in order for me to eat that gross food, I need to work out. But I kind of think of food as fuel, and I'm constantly fueling myself. I'm constantly investing myself. I just got a king size bed, which I'm like really excited about. I've always wanted a king size bed. And I say that story specifically because I'm investing in my sleep, right? So I want to be better rested because my last experience of a bed wasn't that. So I'm investing more into myself through working out, through sleeping, through meditation, and I know like the hipster thing to say is like do meditation, but like to me, I like it, reading books is something I've never really done, but I usually read around like 10 to 20 pages a night just to kind of get out of my phone. I've deleted all of the apps off of my phone for the most part, like social media apps and stuff like that. So the thing that I would recommend is to just invest more into yourself and just whatever the answer. I gave you my answers to that. So you just need to figure out what yours are.
Yeah, no, it's such good advice. And the one I maybe add to it that I've adopted recently is, keep learning, right? I think one thing that I thought 3 years ago, knew everything there was about the B2B world,
Yeah.
heading, but just, having conversations with you, reading, it's opened up my eyes, expanded the horizon. My recommendations have changed. And, it's just the world's changing super quick. And if you're not paying attention to it, you're not taking care of yourself,
Yep.
it's not going to matter. So,
Exactly.
and I did rush myself and I cut off. I asked you two questions. I jumped to the last one. I failed to ask, what's next for you and Penji here in the first quarter? What are you guys going to be working on?
So I think I don't think graphic design is the only service that we're going to be offering. I think we're going to be expanding that. We actually launched a service called Content Fuel, which is completely separate from Penji. And I would love for people to check that out. It's basically the same thing that we're doing with Penji on unlimited graphic design, but for content. We're also going to be doing some other one-off things for Penji as well to increase the customer experience. We don't believe that unlimited retainer-based model is the way of the future, although it's very helpful. So we want to explore some other avenues of that too, to make it a little bit cheaper and more accessible for other people who may not be able to afford $400, $500 a month. So that's definitely something that we're going to be doing too. We're also going to be changing the way that the overall experience in order to just help our customers find the right graphic designer faster. So those are a couple of things too. And for the sake of the conversation, I'd love to be able to offer a coupon code for people that are listening. So if you like the story of what we've discussed today, if you find value in what our team has created, you could use the code B2B Founder 15. So B and then the number 2, B Founder 15, and you'll get 15% off of your first month.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. The listeners will thank you for that as well. And I'll include it in the show notes so it's easy for folks to find. And yeah, I mean, I'd love to have you back on maybe another 9-12 months to kind of touch base, because I think you're living the journey that a lot of companies are going to go through and kind of leading the way. So
sure. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'd be honored.
that'd be awesome. So appreciate the time today. I know you're super busy taking it out. Man, is there any closing thoughts? If not, I'll let you go and get on with your day.
Kick butt.
Perfect, man.
Go Sixers.
You again. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, man. You too.
Cheers.